Dr. Kizza Besigye and other political prisoners that were facing trial in military courts. I will first invite my colleagues to quickly introduce themselves, and we start the press conference.
My name is Nantongo Bashira from the Network of Women in Politics and a part of the women's movement.
My name is Prima Kwagala. I work with the Women's Pro Bono Initiative, also part of the women's movement.
So mine is Henry Muguzi. I work with the Alliance for Finance Monitoring, a pro-democracy organization.
Sarah Birete, I'm a team leader at the Center for Constitutional Governance.
My name is Moses Byamj, and I'm here in the capacity of the National Coordinator for Young Ugandans Network, but also an ally of the Uganda Women's Movement.
My name is Jamonges Timothy. I serve as the Executive Director at the Center for Policy Analysis.
My name is Sheila Amanio Dravile, National Unity Platform under Female Warriors and Network of Women in Politics.
My name is Aloyo Neko Omega. I work as the Advocacy and Communications Officer at FIDA Uganda.
Good morning, my name is Boaz Ongotia from Uganda.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Praise Nabasa is my name, working as an administrator in Uganda.
My name is Nancy Caroline Ayot. I'm here in the capacity of the representative for the Itafati Youth Platform, and I'm also a member of the People's Progressive Party.
Our statement will be read by Prima Kwagala.
This is a joint press statement by Uganda civil society organizations on the continued incarceration and deteriorating health of Dr. Kizza Besigye. We, members of civil society organizations in Uganda, express our profound concern and dismay regarding the continued incarceration of Dr. Kizza Besigye, particularly in light of the recent Supreme Court ruling declaring the trial of civilians in military courts unconstitutional. We are gravely concerned by credible reports of Dr. Besigye's significantly deteriorating health and the urgent need for specialized medical attention, a necessity repeatedly emphasized by his family, lawyers, and friends. Dr. Besigye's ongoing detention constitutes a blatant disregard for the highest court's decision, undermining the rule of law, constitutionalism, and fundamental human rights as enshrined in Uganda's constitution and international legal frameworks, including the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. His continued detention based on charges brought before a military court is a clear violation of this judgment and a grave miscarriage of justice. This act demonstrates a flagrant disregard for the separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary, principles that are vital to a functioning democracy. Dr. Besigye, a prominent political figure and four-time presidential candidate, has endured numerous arrests and detention throughout his career. This pattern of persecution raises serious concerns about the motives behind his continued imprisonment. We fear that the persistent denial of access to adequate medical care for Dr. Besigye is a deliberate act, potentially endangering his life. Such politically motivated actions aim to silence dissent and suppress political opposition. The continued detention of Dr. Besigye and the cruel and inhuman treatment he is being subjected to sets a dangerous precedent for all Ugandan citizens. It cultivates an environment of fear and uncertainty where individuals can be arbitrarily detained and tried in courts outside the purview of the Constitution. This severely erodes public trust in the justice system and undermines the fundamental rights and freedoms guaranteed to all Ugandans. We therefore unequivocally demand the immediate and unconditional release of Dr. Kizza Besigye. Furthermore, we call upon the Ugandan government to respect and uphold the Supreme Court ruling. The government must adhere to the court's decision regarding the unconstitutionality of trying civilians in military courts and ensure its full implementation in all cases. We call upon the Ugandan government to further guarantee access to adequate medical care. Dr. Besigye must immediately be granted access to the specialized medical treatment he urgently requires. We also call upon the government to respect the rule of law and human rights. The government must guarantee the fundamental rights and freedoms of all Ugandans, including the right to a fair trial and freedom from arbitrary detention. We also want the government to cease the persecution of political opponents. The government should refrain from using legal processes as a tool to silence dissent and suppress political opposition. Lastly, we encourage the government to engage in meaningful dialogue. The government should engage in constructive dialogue with all stakeholders, including civil society, opposition groups, to address the underlying issues that contribute to political tensions and human rights abuses. We implore the international community in the same vein, including regional bodies and international human rights organizations, to not only condemn this blatant disregard for the rule of law and human rights, but also to exert significant pressure on the Ugandan government to respect its human rights obligations and ensure Dr. Besigye's immediate release and access to medical care. End of statement.
Mr. Henry Muguzi will summarize the statement in Uganda. Then we go for rejoinders, questions and comments.
So mu bigambo bitono nnyo. So tukuganye wano olwaliro nga banakyewa mu biti byaffe bibiri, ekisooka kyekya ekisinde ekyabakyala abalwanirira eddembe mu ggwanga lino n'ebibiina bya nakyewa ebirala, ng'ekitukuŋŋaanyiza kwe kuba omulanga n'okukoowoola bekikwatako okuba nti basawo obwenkanya eri Dr. Kizza Besigye ne bannayuganda abalala abali mu mbuzi ekogga nga emisango gyabasalirwa kooti ez'amagye. Ekimu ku bitukuŋŋaanyiza wano kwe kuba nti no tulina obwennyamivu n'engeri eddembe ly'obuntu gye likwasibwamu mu ggwanga lyattu Uganda, gye tulowooza nti nno lityoboola amateeka ag'ensi yonna, amateeka agasemazinga Africa n'amateeka ag'eggwanga. Tulowooza nti ebitongole by'eggwanga empagi eggwanga kwe litambulira ng'omuli ekitongole kiramuzi, kitongole parliament n'oluyi olukulembera olwa president, nti birabika tebyetengeredde, nga tusaba wabeerewo obwetengerevu ekitongole kiramuzi kibe nga kikola, essiga eddamuzi libe nga likola emirimu gyalyo gye lirina okukola. Bino bwe biba tebitereezeddwa, kireetawo embeera y'okulaba nti ereetera bannansi okuba nti no bajja obwesige mu mbeera mu ngeri gye bafugibwamu n'engeri eggwanga gye litambuzibwamu. Kyetuvudde tukoowoola bekikwatako okukola ebintu bino wammanga. Ekisooka tusaba tukoowoola wabeewo okuyimbulwa okw'amangu ddala okwa Dr. Kizza Besigye agenda afuna obujjanjabi bwe yeetaaga, so ate era tukoowoola n'okuyimbulwa kwa bannayuganda abalala abali mu mbuzi ekogga nga emisango n'egimu teginnasalwa nga baali bawere n'emba nagyo mu kooti z'abannamagye. Tukoowoola gavumenti ekkirize abasawo abakugu batuuke ku mwami Kizza Besigye n'abasibe abalala betulowooza nti wadde tetubamanyi wali abalala balina ebirwadde byabwe nga n'abamu bamanyi baava dda mu bulamu bw'ensi eno amangu ddala nga bakava mu kkomera. Gavumenti tugikoowoola esse ekitiibwa mu bufuzi obwesigamye ku mateeka. Enfuga ey'amateeka bwe twali tugifuna era bwe baba abasoma amateeka bagitwanjulira batugamba nti buli muntu yenna alina okuba nga ali wansi w'amateeka. Tukoowoola gavumenti ekomye okweyisanga eri waggulu w'amateeka. Era tukoowoola ne tusaba wabeewo kkomo ku kutulugunya abantu ababannansi abavaayo ne baba nga bawakanya gavumenti oba nga babako ne byeboogera ebirabika okuba nti balina bye batakkiriziganya nabyo. Tukimanya bulungi nnyo nti eggwanga okutambula tekisoboka kubeera nga buli muntu assa kimu nga nkuyege. Walina okubawo abantu abamu abalina obutali bumativu bwe bavaayo ne booleka obutali bumativu obwo tusaba baweebwe ebbeetu bagane kubeera nga batulugunyizibwa. Tukoola gavumenti eveeyo yenyigire mu kuteesaganya ensonga zino ezimu zibe nga zisobola okugonjoolwa nga tuyita mu kuteesa. Naye kinaasembayo tukowoola ensi yonna gyeri, abakulembera ensi endala, ebitongole ebigatta ensi yonna, amawanga amanene semazinga ezitali zimu bagezeeko okulaba nti bafaayo ku bigenda mu maaso mu Uganda naddala ku ngeri bannansi abawakanya gavumenti gye bakwasibwamu mu bitongole by'amateeka n'amakomera gye basibiddwa babeere nga balina akazito ke bassa ku gavumenti ya wano ebe ng'ewuliriza esobole okubeera ng'eteekawo embeera esobozesa buli munnayuganda okunyumirwa n'okukyakalira mu ddembe lye ery'obuntu. Statement yaffe bwetyo bwe badde.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kizza Besigye's incident raises serious concerns about the rule of law in Uganda. His deteriorating health is alarming, and it's a clear violation of fundamental rights and freedoms in Uganda. We need to demilitarize justice in Uganda for all citizens, and it's important to note that the worst form of injustice is pretended justice, like we are seeing in the case of Uganda. The Supreme Court gave clear decrees, and I'm glad that the order was finally extracted yesterday of the Supreme Court. The first decree is to cease. The first decree is to declare all provisions of the law that led Kizza Besigye and other people to be tried in court-martial a nullity. That means that there are no cases to transfer from court-martial, because the foundations for which these cases were, based on has collapsed. There are no cases to transfer. The military court can only transfer its exhibits, maybe to DPP. There is no case to transfer from military courts. The second decree is to seize all charges with immediate effect. That alone means that whatever Attorney General is doing, whatever DPP is doing, is pretended justice in this country. If the government wants to charge Dr. Besigye and others, they are supposed to institute fresh charges. That means that they set the people in custody free, they rearrest them when the files are sanctioned by DPP. So this hurabaro we are faced with as Ugandans, the hurabaro that might cost a life of an important leader in this country, is just pretended justice by President Museveni and his members of government. We demand for immediate release of Besigye and all prisoners that are in prisons courtesy of the defunct military courts in Uganda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Like I earlier introduced myself, my name is Moses Byamjisha, and I'm the National Coordinator for Young Ugandans Network. I had the privilege of working with Dr. Besigye for over 18 years, right from reform agenda up to recently when he had the people's government. I had the privilege to attend both closed door and open door meetings. In all those platforms, Dr. Besigye never advocated for armed violence. It therefore, and that was a time when he was still energetic, That was the time when there was money. That was a time when the politics were in his favor. He was an opposition leader, unchallenged. He had people. He had the ability to command that let's go for armed rebellion, and it would happen. But he never did so, amidst a lot of pushes from his colleagues. Therefore, Museveni and Muhoozi cannot make Ugandans believe them that it is now, Besigye at 70 years, when he is retiring, that is when he was going for an armed rebellion. Muhoozi and Museveni should know that Ugandans have refused to accept that. Let them release the man to be free. Twakola wamu ng'abavubuka abamu mumanyi, twakola ne Dr. Besigye gino emyaka gyonna nga tukyali bato kuva mu reform agenda n'okutuuka nga kati ng'alina people's government wali Katonga. Mwegyo myaka nafuna omukisa ogwatendinga meetings wano mu Uganda ne wabweru w'eggwanga, meetings ezaali zirowooza ziplaningira struggle yaffe eno. Naye mu ezo meetings zonna tewali meeting n'emu Dr. Besigye we yagambira abantu nti oba biganye nti katukwate emundu. Instead tumanyi n'abantu abamu bakulembeze banne abamuvaamu kubanga Besigye yagaana ekintu ky'emundu. Ebintu by'okulwanyisa emundu yabigaana ng'akyali muto, ng'alina amaanyi, ng'alina esente, ng'alina abantu, nga factors zonna zikyamufevalinga. N'olwekyo Museveni ne Muhoozi okuvaayo kati ne bagamba nti balina Museveni nti bakwata Besigye kubanga badde agenda kulwanisa emundu. Balina okumanya nti bannayuganda babiganye. Ebyo twabiganye bapangeyo akalala. Omusajja bamute agenda afuna obujjanjabi, ebyo twabiganye bapange ebirala. Thank you.
Thank you so much again. My name is Chemonges Timothy. I serve as the Executive Director at the Center for Policy Analysis. As mentioned, I think we want to call on government to respect the rule of law, but also more importantly, to ensure that there is cohesion in this country. The continued abuse of rule of law creates more division, but also breeds animosity within the citizenry. And that as we proceed to the forthcoming elections, whatever is happening puts us in a place where we fear for the intentions of the states, but also more importantly, how the citizens can continue meaningfully participating in this process. And therefore, as mentioned, our call on government is to respect the rule of law. That as a bare minimum coming from us as the civil society organizations, but also more importantly, calling on Ugandans to participate and to continue being part of this process. Thank you.
My name is Aloyo Nyeko Omega. I work at FIDA Uganda. Our few thoughts on this particular issue are that the government is operating in excesses. If you look at this particular case of Dr. Besigye, from the abduction of a person from Kenya, violating international laws, to the person being taken to military court, to the court actually saying that this is null and void, right? But then you also come and see the head of state coming out to saying that this is a wrong ruling, right? And that he will oppose the ruling. So where does that leave separation of powers if you have the executive interfering in judicial matters? So that just shows that there is no constitutionalism in this country. If a chief political figure can be removed from a country that has laws in place to make sure that people are safe, and there is transborder, I don't want to say transborder crime, but that is transborder crime, without any international organization coming out. Recently, the African Union came out and had its elections. You're yet to see them give a statement such as this one on that matter. We've not seen any embassies in the country that claim they are supporting constitutionalism come out to to condemn this. I was going to say violently condemn this, but this is the time for international actors to also come into play. Civil society can also do so much. So we would like to see our counterparts, Kenya, right, where he was abducted from, countries like Tanzania making stakes on this. You saw Martha Karua in the country. So that is an expression of goodwill, but the international community also has to come out and expressly condemn this through different ways. One of them is sanctions. As a Ugandan, it is hurtful to say, but it is about time that this country is sanctioned for acts like this that are unconstitutional.
Thank you. Again, my name is Amanio Dravile Shila from the National Unity Platform. and under the movement of the female warriors. And I come to stand in solidarity with our sister, Honorable Winnie Byanyima, as a female political participant or leader, fellow leader. We stand in solidarity with her, asking to free her husband. As women, this can happen to any of our husbands. So we cannot sit and watch people being arrested without any case. The abuse of law, the abuse of the Constitution, the human rights abuse. You know, as women, as mothers of this nation, we cannot sit back and keep quiet. These are our husbands, these are our sons. Everything that happens that is against the rule of law affects us as mothers of this nation and as wives of our husbands that are being arrested. Therefore, to add on to the condition that our president yesterday issued, His Excellency Robert Kyagulanyi, he gave a 48-hour ultimatum to free Dr. Kizza Besigye because he is being held in bars illegally. Njagala okwongera eddoboozi nange okugamba nti Dr. Besigye bamute nga president waffe President Kyagulanyi Ssentamu bwe yagambye jjo yawadde essaawa 48 okuta Dr. Besigye. Omusajja atalina musango. Supreme Court yavaayo negamba bye bakwatira bannayuganda mu makomera g'abajaasi tebiriiyo ate bakisazizaawo. Lwaki bakyamukutte? Omusajja bamute baagala asooka afe. This will be a second case. Segirinya yafiira mu komera nga mukutte ebintu ebitaliiyo. Kakati twagala tulinde omulala omuntu addemu afe. But tulyoke tuddemu tukaabe, tulyoke tuddemu tupostinge rest in peace. We have to come out and fight to make sure that there is no Ugandan that is going to die under the law, where they have no case. Thank you very much.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we now open the floor to questions from you, members of the press.
The opposition yesterday also came up and said we don't allow this. Member of Parliament did the same. So many choose the action point. After this condemning, because you're saying it should be released and it doesn't be released, will you just keep talking or you have action point? I call it plan B. You've said and nothing has happened.
Yes. Should we take another question? Yes, Barbara.
My name is Barbara Nyet. I work with Mission Media, right for KFM and Daily Monitor.
If you could be a little louder, please.
I have one question. My question is, what are you planning to do beyond this press conference?
So what he's saying. Any other questions? Yes, please.
I'm Julius Mugaba from Umoja. Recently we saw Honorable Minister Wariomosi visit Besigye in New Zealand, and they instead advised him to start eating for his good health. But as a Minister of National Guidance and ICT, what would you expect of him? Because for your case, you say what's happening is illegal. So what would you expect the Minister of National Guidance to do? I would like to remark on that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, please.
Yes, I'm Ron Mayanja, work for Prime Radio.
Yes.
It seems Kenya is no longer a good neighbor. Last year in October, they arrested 36 youths of the FDC, and they were seriously tortured. What advice or what call would you give Luton? Because it seems Kenya nowadays is used by Museveni. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, or we respond to this first four and then we open the floor again to more questions? I'll pose them first.
So, you know, for us as citizens, we do not have guns. We do not hold levers of political power. The only power we have is the power that is vested in us as citizens. What we can do beyond here is to continue sensitizing citizens, because our concern are that the rights of Ugandans that get to be subjected in these military detentions, that the Supreme Court has already ruled the narrative, should stop. And those that have been serving sentences should be released forthwith. Now, all we can do is to continue talking and mobilizing the citizenry to understand what we're talking about, because we think that time is going to come when this subject matter we're talking about will enlist public reaction. So we'll continue engaging. The other thing we are going to do, I think, is to start speaking to a few prospective people within government, and those that can speak maybe to the president, those that can, the elders maybe. We want to continue engaging and speaking with those that can speak truth to power, and those that can engage in meaningful discussions with the people that can make decisions to make sure that we, not only for Dr. Besigye, but for all the Ugandans that are suffering, whose rights are being violated in circumstances like these. Yeah, so tugambe nti ffe nga bannansi tetulina kirala kyonna kye tulina kukola okuggyako kye tulina okukola kugenda mu maaso nga tusomesa bannayuganda okutegeera ensonga gye tuliko bakimanye nti nno what is it called, eddembe ly'obuntu erya muno we liba lityoboddwa olwaleero enkya eriro liriyinza okutyoboolwa alina okukimanya nti nno kitukakatako nga bannayuganda okulaba nti twenyigira mu kumanya ensonga nga zino n'okubaako n'okugatta eddoboozi lyaffe ku maloboozi g'abalala. Tulowooza nti amaloboozi bwe ganaaba gagattiddwa wamu ag'abannayuganda bonna, oba abasinga obungi, oba oliawo eddoboozi linaafuuka ery'omwanguka ekimala liwulizike. Ekirala kitugenda okukola kwe kwogera n'abantu abakulu, abakulembeze b'amadiini, abakulembeze b'amawanga, naye abantu betulowooza abali munda mu system mu government betulowooza nti nno balina endowooza ey'enjawulo, tusobole okulaba butya bwe basobola okubanga boogera n'omukulembeze w'eggwanga, kuba kati alina ekisumuluzo ekiyinza okuyimbulwa bannayuganda abali mu mbuzi ekogga, basobola okuba nti boogera naye bamukakkanya emmeeme, bamugonza omutima, bamuleetera okuba nti yeekuba mu mutima, asobole okuba nti alagira okuyimbulwa kwa bannayuganda abawere n'embeera mu mbuzi ekogga ku misango gye tulowooza nti nno kkooti yalaze nti gya butaliimu.
Well, the purpose of this press conference is to add our voice to the people calling for immediate and unconditional release of Dr. Besigye. We want Ugandans to understand that President Museveni, through the wrong advice of the Attorney General, has reenacted the Preventive Detention Act of 1966. Besigye is in prison with no legal basis. They have overthrown Article 23 of the Constitution to say that to take a person's liberty, you must have a legal basis. But after the Supreme Court decision on January 31st, the continued detention of Dr. Besigye, Haj Obeid, and others is an overthrow of Article 23 of the Constitution on how a person's liberty should be taken or denied, and an overthrow of Article 28 of the Constitution on a right to a free and fair trial. So we shall mobilize people to refuse an overthrow of the Constitution in Uganda.
And in addition to the advocacy to request for the release of Dr. Besigye, we as Women League National Unity Platform, we are organizing a protest walk, a protest march to Parliament, taking a petition there to the Speaker requesting for the immediate release of Dr. Kizza Besigye. We are going to march on the 24th of February. We have already requested police for security and any kind of protection. Since they did it for PLU, which was also taking a petition to Parliament, let's also take our authentic petition to Parliament requesting for justice for one of our leader, who is a four-time presidential candidate, for immediate release, for justice to happen. Okwongerako okulwanira eddembe lya Dr. Kizza Besigye n'abalala bonna be basiba abasibe mu military court, okuli Bobby Yango, okuli ne Dr. Obedi ne Dr. Besigye, fenga ekisinde ne Aaron Kizza, yes, fenga ekisinde ky'abakyala mu National Unity Platform tweteeseteese okutambula okutwala ekiteeso kyaffe owa speaker Speaker Anita Among ng'abiri mu 4 February ogwokubiri eyo mandaja baluwa twaziwandiise eri IGP tusuubira nti agenda jiddamu nga bwe baba abakuumi ebirala ebisinde ebiri mu byobufuzi naffe batuwe protection, batuwe guidance, batuwe olukisa tugende twali ekitenso kyaffe. Tetugenda kusirika nga tulaba obumenyi bw'amateeka nga tulaba constitution eri mu kutyoboola ng'eddembe ly'abantu liri mu kutyoboola amateeka we gaba gasazeewo. Lwaki wabeerawo abantu abagamba bali waggulu w'amateeka? N'olwekyo tetugenda kupowa, tetugenda kukomaawo, tugenda kwongera okulwanirira eddembe ly'abo abasibe bonna. Oluvannyuma lw'essaawa 48 nga President zeyagambye tugenda ng'ekibiina National Unity Platform bagenda kuvaayo n'ekiddako. Ate bagezaako okutubuzaabuza okukwata kwa chairman waffe, Chairman Nyanzi, chief mobilizer waffe. Bamukutte nga baagala to divert us. They want to divert us, but we are focused on making sure we fight for freedom, we fight for all the political prisoners to be released. Chairman Nyanzi tukyamunoonya bamukutte jjo in the evening babadde bava mu meeting, twabadde ne meeting jjo nga tukola meeting ya by election gye tugenda ogendamu naye baagala mukwata okutunafuya naye tetugenda kunafuya ng'ekibiina.
Thank you. We expect better from Dr. Baryomunsi, with all due respect. As a minister in charge of information and national guidance, he should be advising his bosses to act with urgency. This man is not looking okay. The entire country can see that. For you to come and try to sanitize the situation before the whole country is very wrong. You know, Ugandans are not stupid. We can see what is happening. Dr. Besigye is not okay. We may not be his supporters or voters, but it is incumbent upon us to act and ensure that he receives the adequate medical care that he needs. If he has decided that going on a hunger strike is what is left to him to secure his liberty, Dr. Besigye is a human being. He's entitled to do that. So you cannot force him to eat. We expect him to use his office to compel his bosses to release Dr. Besigye unconditionally until the books are in order and they have something for him to respond to. But for now, we all know that there is nothing that the state has in place. The court has said that whatever the manner in which he was arrested was unconstitutional. He needs to be released. Let the man go home. Let him go get the medical attention that he needs so that he can respond to any charges if the DPP comes up with any. Because he's sick, he's not going to run away. You can see that he cannot walk clearly. Begging him to eat is not the solution in this case. So they need to release him.
Thank you very much. Today we are seeing our neighbor, Kenya, who is actually known to be a former giant of the East African community, lowering itself to succumb to issues that are actually making Ugandans suffer, because we have been used to this kind of illegitimacy for the past 40 years. And our neighbor Kenya, having had different presidents standing on their feet, contributing to economic transformation, contributing to regional integration, contributing to peace and democracy, joining hands with a 40-year term serving president to join hands and also participate in, my sister called it an offense, because her arresting Kizza Besigye and Hajo Bedru Tare from Kenya without any processes, and a minister from a country like Kenya coming out and saying, I didn't even know Kizza Besigye was in our country. So that means this country has also lost its integrity regarding security, regarding issues of democracy and human rights. So we are very disappointed with the current leadership in Kenya. We are very disappointed. I think we should, the current leadership should copy notes from the great leaders that have served Kenya previously and contribute to regional transformation and human rights rather than adding a brick to the dehumanization in the East African community. I beg to submit.
Well, njagala kusaba bannayuganda obutawa budde ebintu ebitalimu magezi. Enneeyisa ya CDF ng'ayita ku mukutu gwa Twitter eswaza eggwanga, eswaza amagye, etyoboola ekitiibwa ky'amagye, etyoboola ekitiibwa ky'eggwanga, emenya ssemateeka, emenya n'amateeka ga UPDF oba UPDF Act. Era buli omu ndowooza kati buli munnayuganda akimanyi nti akulira amagye aliwo tasaanidde, era tusaba mukulu Museveni amugye mu office ya government kubanga tabisobola. Well, I want to request Ugandans to stop giving time to useless things like the messages we see on the X handle of the current CDF. His conduct violates the UPDF Act, violates the Constitution, violates the sovereignty of Ugandans and of Uganda, and is an embarrassment to Uganda globally. I want to request the president, I'm sure by now all Ugandans know that the current CDF is not qualified to hold that office based on his conduct. I want to request the president to remove him from that office and any government office for that matter. Well, embeera ya Besigye okubeera nti nakati akyali mukomera okuva Supreme Court bwe yawa ensala ku abantu ba bulijjo abakozesebwa kooti z'amagye, emenya amateeka, emenya ensala ya Supreme Court gye yateekako, emenya ne ssemateeka wa Uganda. Kubanga Supreme Court era kyamukisa nti kati balooya bajeyo order eya Supreme Court oba decree especifyinga bulungi kiki Supreme Court kye yasalawo. Order esooka ku decree eyo yakugamba nti sections eza etteeka lya UPDF kooti y'amagye gye yali ekozesa okuwozeza abantu ba bulijjo tezikyaliwo, era Supreme Court nezimenyawo nti zimenya ssemateeka wa Uganda, era tezikyaliwo. Order ey'okubiri ya Supreme Court kwe kugamba nti emisango giyimirire with immediate effect. Era government bw'eba eyina kyevunaana abo abantu egende mu court eziri competent. Order bw'eyogera bw'etyo. Kati ekyo kiraga nti teri files ez'okutransferinga kuva mu kooti y'amagye. Kubanga zino files ze bakyajingirako Besigye amateeka tegakyaliwo, sections kooti yazimenyawo. Kati omusango gwe guba teguyina legal basis, guba teguliiwo, era files teziriiwo. Singa government ebeeyagala egende fune exhibits ezali mu kooti y'amagye, eziwe police, eziwe DPP, bakole emisango emipya n'abantu babavunaane bupya mu kooti ez'amateeka eziriwo oba civilian courts. Kati bino Attorney General byagamba nti yawandiikidde DPP eteekeko committee byakwonoona budde bw'Abannayuganda, byakudinayinga justice kwaba abantu abavunaanibwa kooti y'amagye ng'obaliddemu ne Dr. Besigye ne Haji Obed. Tebiriiwo era bikyamu. There are no files to transfer. Well, civil society has always condemned trial of civilians in court martial. Maybe what you could blame us for is not specifying the tribes of these people. But we have collectively condemned the trial of civilians in court martial.
I know you're all fully aware that we are dealing with a very bogus situation. very bogus indeed, where we don't have a government as is constitutionally required. And you also know that we don't have the rule of law at play. You can use very many glossy words, but the bottom line is this. We are dealing with a very bogus situation where nobody is in charge and nobody is in control. What we are doing here is pleading with a sane government, a sane institution, which unfortunately doesn't exist in this part of the world. We are doing our very best to act normal in a very abnormal situation. For years we've talked about state capture, and I think it's playing out in full view. So bear with the civil society and all the activists in asking for normal things and acting under the rule of law. But what is for sure in global purview is that we are dealing with a very bogus situation where the president has not said a word about the outcry of the people. We are talking about a parliament that has been rationalized. Part of the things that took place in rationalizing state entities, the Parliament of Uganda was rationalized with the executive. And you can see the rules happily presented and approved by Honorable Katuntu is to stop anybody from talking about the executive. And so the bogus situation we found ourselves in, we will have to create a vehicle fit for purpose to deal with it. But I want to appreciate every voice, every normal voice that has spoken about the events as we see them and the threats that face us collectively. In the absence of that plan B for now, we will continue to work with plan A. But when it becomes absolutely inevitable, we will activate plan B. Thank you. Embeera tugyogereko nga bweri. Nti embeera teri mu nkola ya ssemateeka nga bwe tugimanyi. Tuli mu mbeera ya kigwagwa. Kuba tetukyasobola kuddayo mu bitundu byaffe bye baatusangamu nga tetunafuuka Uganda. Tuddeyo twefuge ng'Abasoga, twefuge ng'Abanyankole, twefuge ng'Abakyoli, tetukyasobola. Eno Uganda gye twakoleramu omukago okubeeramu baagituwambamuko. Kati tusigadde ttayo. Tewali amanyi kyakola, bannaddiini bw'otunulayo bambi nnaku njereere. Bw'otunuulira mu byobuwangwa traditional leaders bambi nnaku njereere eri bafu. Bw'otunuulira abaasoma nnaku njereere tebamanyi na kyakwogera na kyakulowooza nnaku. Bw'otunuulira kye bayita gavumenti, paalamenti yeegatta dda ne executive nabo tebamanyi kyakola. Mutunuulire judicial yo yennyini nannyini kutuwa nsalawo nalwo jjo lwe bajjukidde nti twagamba immediate. Mu Luzungu immediate means within the first 12 hours oba there and then. Naye nabo bambi bakitegeera nti wasooka kuyita ennaku 17. Olaba kati bannayuganda obwesige bwaffe buli weereere. Eyo yonna gye muli obwesige tuli weereere, tulina okunoonya plan B. kuba eremye twakiriziganya tukolere mu ssemateeka twakukiriziganya tutambule ng'eggwanga naye kiremye so bannange bwe kiba kyeremye tetukaaba nnyo tunoonye ekyokukola nze neebaza aba civil society kuba bakoze ekyo civil society kyeteeka okukola abantu ba bulijjo bakoze ekisoboka naye ndowooza abantu ba bulijjo empapula zetusoma sizezo twandirumbye nga bukavu bwe balumbye twandirumbye nga North Kivu bwe balumbye kyekisigalidde bwe tunaamala ebyo tuliteesanga naye bino bye tulimu byonna faaji tewali awulira tewali ayagala kumanya tewali ayagala kumanya pulezidenti tayogerangako kintu kyonna banaddiini ne mukama waabwe bwe batunuulidde role model waabwe naye bamwegaana dda banoonya pajero abakulembeze byennono no baatya dda kuba sekawuka kaali kakulumyeko abo mbategeera naye eddiini fe aboogera ku banunuzi Matters Day tutawanya ensimbu public holiday byonna byambwa bannange kitalunye eri eggwanga